Welcome to another episode of Cloud Unplugged. Got some new news for this week. It's all about retail hacks. The retail in the UK, Co-op, Marks and Spencer's, and kind of Harrods, but Harrods managed to do a good job. Basically, that was the drama this week, almost pretty much to the point of being closed down. Cloud growth numbers obviously soaring, which I'll kind of come on to, like how much it's grown by. And a curveball of just something at the end, little bit of news that's random, little surprise one that I'll do at the very end. And Lewis, what are you going to be talking about today in the news?
So Amazon seemed to bubble up to the top of the things which seem to be vying for attention.
Amazon AI.
So there's certainly a whole bunch of announcements around AI, their own models, their own services, and what those services are based on, their own APIs. And also there's an announcement from Amazon, not related to AI, about SaaSing Amazon and their marketplace.
SaaSing Amazon and their marketplace. Cool. That's good. Did you have a good bank holiday before we get into the news?
I did, yeah. I met up with friends. We prepared for a barbecue and went to Marks and Spencer's. Couldn't get beans. And our friends couldn't pay on cards. Well, they couldn't pay on cards. It was working with the card by the time we got there. Yeah, anyway, we'll come to that. So that was fun. And also I carried on my little experiment with vibe programming with my son, or for my son. But definitely not writing a single line of code.
This is you programming another child. AI. As you decided as a son.
Yeah. Is that?
I don't know what's going on.
That's what you're telling me there. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Did he get into it more this time round, or is it still you doing all the vibe coding?
He's very much into the application. And there's definitely some stuff I'd read on the right way to do sort of vibe programming and use one big model to come up to take a feature description where you just write a sentence. I'd like my app to do this kind of thing. And you get it to generate a markdown document describing exactly how it will work, given its access to the code base and it working out how it would work. And then you can iterate in place and say, nearly, but actually this page is meant to do that and blah, blah, blah. A couple of iterations, and then you say, okay, now do it. And it did.
You did it.
It just kind of worked. It was it's a phenomenally simple app, but it's got some back end. It's got a front end. It's in memory. It's vote viz. Find it on GitHub. Have a little look. It's running on Firebase. It was fun.
That's good. Very cool. So you tried to go to Marks and Spencer's, but you couldn't pay because they'd basically been. I mean, their hack was pretty impressive, to be fair. They went all in on that one. Dragon Force was who did that one, and then Scattered Spider was the one that was the group that did the co-op. But I don't think anyone knows who it was for Harrods because they managed to lock it down quickly.
I heard slightly differently, but that might be just like, I don't know.
You hear differently?
Yeah. But I heard that Dragon Force were the providers of the ransomware software.
Yeah, correct. And then the networking one was a different team.
Yeah, and it thinks the spider guys.
Scattered
Spider. I think they may have been the actual group that perpetrated the attack for Marks and Spencer's anyway. So they used or had to pay the ransomware guys, the Dragon Force people, for their ransomware SaaS. I don't know in the dark web. I don't know how it worked, but there's affiliations and a mature marketplace of crime here.
Well, if we get into it, I guess so for the co-op one, and I'm hoping my information is correct. It's been on the news and the story kept changing, so I can't really work out now what's truth and what's PR.
It's fact on the news.
They could obviously try to do a spin to protect their brand, as you would, I suppose. But from what I understood, there was a logging server. Co-op was migrating to Azure, as part of an Azure migration. There was a central logging service that was public to the internet. It was that managed to be exploited, which then gave them all of the logs of, I think, nothing like to do with sensitive customer data, but gave them internal information logs, I think, of like teams and usernames and passwords logging into things and stuff. And I think at that point, then they started to then send direct messages using some specific tool, Team Fisher, I think it is, some like Python app, Microsoft Teams, and then started to basically send messages that way. And then ended up kind of getting in, then from that point on, and managed to kind of exploit beyond that, from getting access to people's usernames and passwords to log into systems to then obviously infiltrate further. Marks and Spencer was kind of the same, but it was just pure Team Fisher. So they used social engineering on Team Fisher app to pretend to be different people. And then managed to then deliver payloads.
So hang on, Marks and Spencer's was the same as Co-op. They both had logging service breaches first, or different
Co-op,
ways in?
Co-op was first the log server to get the data about the people that work there, and then do a more targeted attack. Marks and Spencer's was just using that Team Fisher Python app that then kind of pretends to be people, different people. We get it at work sometimes. People get emails from me, even though the email address would be like bibbidybob123@gmail.com or whatever, right? But it'd be like, I don't know, it'd be like, hey, Lewis, I've tried to call you, really important. Can you give me a call back on this number? I did that, though. Oh.
I always respond.
Do you always ring? Yeah. But do you not think
you're hearing live on all sorts of things?
Do you not think when you heard my voice, what was the accent? Was it?
It was, hello, my name is Jon and Lewis.
So basically
pretty
like
unsophisticated.
Me.
But I thought, that's got to be
similar.
You. Yeah.
Pretty similar to me.
I jest. Yeah. I haven't responded to any of those, but that's quite a surprise. We've had them. We've had.
Yeah, we get them quite a lot. I get messages from people saying, "I'm guessing this wasn't you," just because people aren't sure. Obviously, I think it's so brief that I could be stuck in a well somewhere and desperately need to speak to somebody. I don't know. But yeah, so I think obviously we're doing like phishing attacks, and then I think they were then basically using SharePoint files, like payload delivery to the SharePoint files, to deploy some like malware, some like, I think it's JSS loader that then basically obviously then loads up malware as well, and then managed to compromise the credentials and get onto the VPN using MFA fatigue attacks and SIM swapping and things like that. And then once they got onto the VPN, then they could actually start to hop around the VPN, because there wasn't really much protection once you're on the VPN. It was pretty broad and you could roam around everywhere.
Pretty sophisticated and a full-on breach.
It was
full-on internal access to their systems.
And then they got the Active Directory database. Yeah, got the Active Directory database exfiltrated, so then they got all of that. Then they cracked those passwords through, like, obviously a password hash cracker called like soft perfect or whatever. And then once they'd done that and they had access to passwords, they then got into the VMware estate, which is basically the big, I think their back end, where most of their back end is, because obviously they've got some stuff in the cloud and obviously a load of probably critical back end services, I imagine logistics services, all on VMware and probably Oracle or whatever, who knows. And then they encrypted basically the VMs with a key, basically locking everyone out with, and that's when you earn the ransomware. So then you're like, look, if you want these decrypted and you want to restore a service, you need to pay £17 million, please.
Do you reckon they paid? Or spent £17 million on their own staff working?
No, they lost £360 million being down. So I guess 17 in the grand schemes of 360 in the period that they were down. I mean, in the end, like,
I mean, maybe if you've got to fix it, right? You don't want to pay the 17 mil and then like the next week it goes, well, you didn't fix it, so we'll do it again.
That's basically what the CTO did. He rang everybody, and it was a really moving message. And he went, "We've got to fix it." And everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're right." Why didn't we think of that? Yeah,
We were just paying up. We just had the credit card, and we were
just
dragon
wiring
people
17 million to some unknown guy. So called John Shanks. We got this email saying to call him
at Bibblybob.
Yeah, Bibbidi Bob. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So so I think it was quite that. Marks and Spencer sounded quite sophisticated. I think, though, obviously internally, like the Active Directory to extract that data, the VPN, and there's obviously layers of weaknesses inside of it to be able to exploit further. So it was like, I guess this is kind of the thing. The same with the co-op. It's like there was an entry point that made them see the co-op, right? Because they're scanning all the time, everything, and then this pinged back.
Is it fair to say the first bit? Well, actually, it's a multi-pronged thing. There's many layers, aren't there? There was a misconfiguration, so a bit of human error to allow these logs to be private. In one case,
it was a human error which allowed this. Well, wait. The human error, though, misconfiguration, allowed for the automation of the whole scanning of the internet that goes on. Because you have tools running all the time across all the Amazon IPs and all of the Azure IPs, etc. It obviously pinged to say, "Hey, there's a thing over here," and then the tool then obviously went in and did the thing, and then obviously they then worked out, who it was. At that point, once you've worked out who it was, that's the radar, isn't it? It's almost like the Batman symbol.
Yeah.
So I guess really, then in that sense, I think that could have been more avoidable, because had they have put the policies in the cloud first and worked backwards from making exemptions for certain things where you need it, instead you've probably done no real policies, put the thing in and not even known. Obviously for speed, it's a migration rather than caution. So I mean, the rule of thumb is make sure you just put the policies in place. There's plenty out there, CIS benchmark policy. Literally, you could put the CIS ones, NIST, whatever. You could have put them all in, and then it wouldn't have been public to the internet, because that would have been blocked by default. So I think that one was a bit more avoidable, to be fair. Obviously accidental, it's human error, like you're saying, but that's the point of policies, is people do make mistakes, hence why you have the policies, really. But
yeah. Well, security is hard. It's harder to make things absolutely secure because it causes friction for people, but people fundamentally have to put the security in and develop with security on, otherwise they're going to be vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then you don't have a business. So
you don't have a business. You're 360 mil down. But so I think actually co-op is still down from what I read. I think bits of it are still down. They have to pay. You can't pay on your card. I think in some stores you still have to pay via cash, I think.
Do you think there's any massive insight or nugget to summarize? Do you think cybersecurity breaches are on an increase? Do you think, dare I say it, AI has been used potentially to help people use or broker or discover?
No, I think this was like, I mean, who knows? I think the apps. I mean, one of them is just a Python app called Team Fisher, and it's a way of pretending on Microsoft Teams to be somebody else, and same as email. Like I was explaining before, if you call
so you don't think there's any increase in the use of these tools?
Not really. I mean, these have been around for like things that auto scan and detect for certain things. Mostly for a lot of the times, it's Bitcoin mining more than it is anything else, right? Like people use your compute to Bitcoin mine. That's normally the default that goes on all the time. But I don't think it's any more or worse. Not that I'm aware of, anyway.
Sure. And one other thing, just to sort of on the general hacking theme, you haven't heard anything about the electricity supply in Iberia? No little nuggets or updates?
I do believe from somebody in the know that it was a cyber attack. But that's just, again, conjecture. It wasn't you. It was somebody that has closer relations with cyber. But I don't know. I mean, it felt very much like a cyber attack to me, the way that it managed to all go down. It felt very coordinated.
From an engineering perspective, it didn't seem like you could fluke across one sort of type of power or even one manufacturer of power things in one particular... No. Yeah, it seemed
Yeah,
like
it
that
seemed
was a
odd.
more likely. But yes,
But
interesting.
I don't know. That's, I mean, again, that isn't. I knew, that's an off-record thing that someone mentioned. Who knows? So, but yeah, it did seem more that way. But and obviously, this is truly is cyber. There's no disguising that because they've come out and said so. I think the co-op kind of tried to cover it up a bit because that happened in February. Bits of this happened in February, yeah, and then I think there was like people saying they didn't anyway, and then it turns out they obviously did. So that's it. So that's my news for that.
Wow.
Amazon then. So you say there are some new AI services taking over the world.
Yeah.
And what are they like?
Well, it's interesting. The cloud providers obviously having access at cost to a lot of compute and being aligned with the AI foundational model providers to provide hosting services. In the case of Microsoft, that's very closely aligned. There's an affiliation and a share ownership sort of thing going on there. And in the case of Google, they obviously are creating foundational models. It's part of their core business, and they've been hosting it as such for a long time. And Amazon don't really have a play. I think they've got a lot of shares in Anthropic, but they haven't really got a bit of Anthropic in their estate, knowingly. Don't know. That bit's a little less woolly, but they're now very publicly come out with a whole raft of AI announcements. So I'll start first with their models. They've got their own models. It's a Nova series of models. So they are creating foundational models that are trained and have varying levels of capability depending on how much compute you run and how much you therefore pay for. So they've got their Premier Nova model and a whole raft of other models that are related to gen and image generation and LLMs, etc.
Very specific models, very specific use case to what you're saying.
Their own internal model.
Well,
not quite. So they've got a foundational model. Their Premier Nova model is a foundational model.
Right.
So it is a general LLM. But yeah, their own training, their own model, they're owning it. Right. Then they've got Amazon Bedrock, which is their AI model API, which allows access to all the Nova models, but also Claude 3.5 and others. So
right.
You can tell I haven't actually played with the AI. This particular API.
This is like the news, yeah.
Read the news, yeah. And it's interesting. It's not the latest Claude, and I don't know. It's interesting to know if Anthropic are hosted on Amazon or not, and if there's any reciprocal, arrangement. But the main thing is Amazon Bedrock is a way to get at AI models using an API. So your workloads can then use AI. But then there's some service announcements as well. Amazon Q.
Yeah, it's been a while though, Q.
Yeah, but I guess it's been percolating and using later models, and they've gone a lot further. So they've got two arms of Q. Is that even a thing? Two flavors of their Q product service.
Two Q-shaped arms. Yeah, which is really ineffective when you're trying to. Yeah,
and then another one over here.
So really one of hard
them,
to do stuff.
Yeah, one of them's Amazon Q Business, which is more to do with working with business flows and logistics and all sorts of niche areas that you might want to build out agentic flows, etc. And the other part is Amazon Q Developer, which is integrated at the most fundamental level as some software that can be run as a CLI or integrated into your IDEs. So there's a Visual Studio add-in, and also add-ins for various other IDEs, Eclipse, etc., etc. So they're going broad, and they're trying to meet developers where they are. And also they released, I saw from yourself, MCP suite of server tools, which may be released to work with, they're MCP servers, so you can run them anywhere, whether they're natively already built into their IDE add-ins, or you've then got to do that separately. But fundamentally, the IDE AI integration needs to know about the MCP. So, and it's interesting they're working with the existing IDEs rather than Windsurf or Cursor, who fork the IDEs and own the IDE space because they want slightly tighter integration and more features. So, but anyway, Amazon's play on whether you're doing CI/CD, Terraform, Amazon CloudFormation, right in their tool base, or whether using it for general code generation.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, I did see that they've got the AWS MCP server that you can just run, obviously, yourself. But they've got quite a few. There's like a Terraform workflow one, diagrams.
It's a very easy thing to release, to be fair. The MCP standard is almost a description.
Discovery bits as well, obviously.
Yeah, it's a description is the discovery bit, mate. Pretty much, you write down some English.
Yeah.
I am a thing that knows how to run LS, and I will be an LS MCP server. And then the actual thing can be of a different type of executor. So you can have a JSON API interface, or you can literally have a CLI with arguments. So you could make your own MCP by typing LS and some words and plugging it in as an MCP server. Yay! So it's pretty thin, regardless of the level of integration.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Yeah, the MCP server is obviously it's a thin thing. But I think as it gets more enriched and offers more capability, then I think it's kind of interesting to see whether when you're building on top of that, like another agent to agent type things, you start to connect, you move into their MCP server, you connect in with your agent to then speed things up. So it is going to be quite an interesting thing, but it's still quite early.
It is early, yeah.
And the marketplace stuff, what was the news for the marketplace? You said some sassy. They've got more sassy, is what you said.
On the 1st of May, they're basically making a change to the AWS marketplace to allow for SaaS products to be listed irrespective of where they're hosted. So the AWS marketplace used to be for AWS customer or internal offerings on the AWS cloud platform. And now they've changed that. They said, oh, no, we can make it a general software marketplace. And then we can give a little differentiator badge to people who are hosted on AWS as like a little free uplift. Oh, you're on AWS. We like you. We might even list you first. Who knows? I don't know what the play is here. It's an interesting announcement.
Isn't that more like a disty, though? They're like becoming more of a distributor for licensing. So essentially, you end up using the Amazon marketplace to buy any software, essentially. So you might want Jira, or could be anything, right? And actually, you can use your cloud credits, I guess, to offset the cost. If you've got a commitment to spend, say, like, well, we're committed for 5 mil or whatever. Then actually,
so it's a marketplace store, very much like the Apple Store, 30% tax on all things that run in the Apple.
They do marketplaces well, though. Amazon, that is, they are good at the old. It's an
interesting. It's an interesting thing what the driver is, and it's whether their marketplace is easy to navigate, easy to. I mean, I remember trying to go through the process in a previous era, trying to release software to that, and it was very painful, and it involved humans and CSV files and all sorts of craziness.
I remember all of that. that's when you are. They do. It's when you're trying to do something inside of a customer's estate.
But when you're using it, when you're your client of, it might be very good.
Well, for a SaaS, and say you then just if it's just literally is buying, licensed software of a thing as a distributor, say, HashiCorp, right? You want to buy X number of licenses for that, and you're using this, HashiCloud or whatever.
There's a benefit on both sides. There's a benefit for them to take a cut, and also for the punter to be able to discover and use more against one credit pool. Which
I think it's very smart. I think it's really, really smart, because a lot of people are going to. There's the marketplace, even just the cloud security marketplace. The cloud security market is massive, and you obviously are in the cloud, and it starts with the cloud. So therefore, then offering all of the things that are going to layer in, so you're not being ultra competitive where you're then having to have all those services yourself as the cloud. Actually, there's a margin I could just take, off these other services. Like, why are we just not taking a margin of all these products that other people are buying anyway, like Wiz?
Very sassy.
It is very sassy. I think hats off. I think that does make a lot of sense for them. Obviously, hyper growth and ultra mega behemoth.
It's interesting. Their background is obviously storefront. With Amazon as the brand and where they came from on a consumer facing side, and then they evolved into the AWS stuff, and similar things have happened in China. Alipay and what's the other one? My mind's gone blank. But there's very similar storefront experiences with that then became cloud companies, obviously, and the same story. And so they already had a store. So it's like, at which point do these full circle, or do other clouds follow suit? I don't know. They might.
Well, there is. I mean, they do. They all have their marketplace. I think it if you're losing revenue, competitive to say something like Wiz, and Wiz is eating the market, say, for cloud security as a cloud security products offering, and you've kind of got semi-competitive tools there, but people are aligning more to Wiz because it's more enriched or got whatever the reason is. But then, why not take a percentage of something that people are buying anyway, and just make it easier to buy it? So I have two extra bits, one secret bit and one normal bit, the cloud growth stuff. Nothing really that interesting, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, other than the fact that this is going to really shock you. It's growing.
Try. No.
The cloud is growing, yeah.
The cloud? No, we're talking about clouds.
The cloud spend, more people are using the cloud.
Or?
Yeah, all of the...
Drinking water from the clouds, or... We're talking
923 billion. Yeah, 923 billions by the end of 2027. That's dollars, though, obviously.
That's across all clouds in the US, or
just
where is this?
All the global cloud market, yeah. And that's up be 15% growth essentially from 2021, and something like 80% of enterprises basically know they're going to be spending more in the cloud. That's what they've all said. And I did read another stat. I think like nearly 90% of businesses are in the cloud, or something insane. It's like some quite high stat of how many organizations seem to already have some footprint in the cloud to some degree. So that's nothing really you kind of would expect it. I think obviously it's going to diversify with all the AI space and SaaSes and all the other things that you're going to get. So it'll probably just grow in that sense. But it's not public cloud only. It's cloud in general. It's a cloud market, which is obviously massive.
I was hearing Microsoft had their earnings announcement, and they were citing all the cloud.
Were they going big numbers? Nearly gone under.
Funnily enough. Yeah, there's no cloud demand. There is no cloud. I don't know where they're getting this from. Yeah, so there's a big growth from the perspective of individual revenue of individual cloud vendors, and also across the markets. Yeah, kind of stands to reason.
And the secret bit is, if you are worried, which you might be, about Google DeepMind, basically getting all your data, because obviously, Google, and then producing. So say you're a publisher, say you write news articles, say you're an image thing, you've got a portfolio of your images on there, and you think to yourself, well, I hope Google doesn't train on my data. Maybe there's a way to stop it. Maybe I can kind of opt out and say, actually, do you know what? Please don't steal my IP. Just make your site not searchable. That's the answer there. If you really don't,
it's that simple.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the button that says "Don't search"?
No robots
available.
No robots.txt file.
That's it. You just make one of those files.
You remove it. Don't have one.
No, Yeah. What about if it's already been ingested and then you make a no robots? You're too late, basically.
If it's already been ingested, then good luck figuring out
Yeah,
if it's already been ingested.
no one knows how to unlearn things from a model at all
No, it would
without
be nice.
relearning from scratch. So that's interesting.
So yeah, so basically there is no real proper way to stop it other than removing your site to be indexed completely.
Did Google have some antitrust? And were there some announcements with Google's reach being under?
They had all these like preview stuff. Yeah, there was some like preview. I think there's some opt-out preview things or something. Something was going on, but they were saying that there isn't. It kind of did some announcement, but they made it sound like you could block things from being searchable by AI models and all this other stuff. But actually, it wasn't really. The search AI was searching everything, and then it was actually still like saying it actually secretly was ingested anyway. But they made it sound like you could actually opt out of models being trained on your stuff, and it transpires.
How naive! You can't.
No, you can't.
No, you can. The way to make it secure is to keep it offline. A bit like, secure, private, same thing. Unplugged. There we
basically
go.
Just
Cloud unplugged. That's the name of our show.
Wow.
Just unplug it all, and it's secure and it's private.
Do you reckon fax machines are going to come back into fashion? Yeah, they're going to make a comeback. Yeah,
paper and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll be faxing pictures, ideas, images because we just don't.
Well, if there is a massive increase in cyber attacks, and someone attacks some fundamental infrastructure, not just one store, maybe we'll have to do that.
Be CDs, so it's going to be the rise of CDs to protect your music, so you can't train on music, and the rise of fax machines.
It's basically the 90s. The 90s racing to get back to the 80s as quickly as possible, and then ending up in the 70s with absolutely no computers.
Exactly, and then with the power outages, it could be like 1800s. So
what you need is progress back.
Exactly, that is progress. Yeah,
well, I'm glad we've worked out the very practical measures that our listeners can take to opt out of Google.
Yeah. Well, no, you did make me that. But that is it for us on another episode. Tune in next week. We'll be obviously again looking at the news, seeing what the next hot topics are, and keeping you up to date. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Adios.